Hi, welcome to or back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about the books that I read during this semester of college. First off, I wanted to give a few disclaimers, and that is because I kind of have a unique standpoint. I know I've read a lot this semester, but I don't really know if this is a realistic reading amount for everyone. I think it definitely can be depending on what you're studying, but if you're curious, I am a creative writing major. And that means I have a lot of literature classes, which means I have a lot of built-in reading already. I have an English certificate also in editing and publishing, and that also has a lot of reading. And finally, I'm a music minor. And music minors, though I do think it is kind of hard to study, it is not STEM. And also, I had a lot of free time, and I did not have a job because I had had a job for a long time in high school. And I wanted to take a break and enjoy college. So I didn't have a job. I had a lot of free time though. So that's how I read so much. So let's just get into it. I was at school this semester from like early January and I got out like May 2nd. So I'm counting all the books that I read and finished on campus. Since then I have read like 2 more books, but they don't count. So I also counted during final season. I didn't have any finals, so I just kind of read, and I wrote a lot of essays for my finals and projects, but I still count that time because I was at college and I did get a lot of reading done. First up, I read Better Than the Movies. I love this so much. I brought it to college on impulse because I was like, I want one more book, so I grabbed it off my shelf. I read it the night I went back, all in one sitting. It was so good. Moving on, I also listened to a lot of audiobooks. So this was my first audiobook of the year. It was The Golden Enclaves, which is the 3rd book in a Deadly Education series. I thought it was a good finale. One of my New Year's resolutions this year was to read more books that I own and also finish series. And that is one of the series that I finished first of the year. So next up, even though I said I wouldn't start any more series, I did. This is not even bones. It was so good. Definitely look up trigger warnings if you're interested in reading it. But I read that book. I read the second one, Only Ashes Remain, still very good. And then I took a bit of a break and read this for class. It is called Exit West. I did not enjoy it, but I did read it, and I do think like the sparkles on the cover are really fun. It was for a literature class focusing on immigration, which was super important topic, and I'm really glad I took it. Great professor, everything is so good. But I will say that was the worst book that we had to read. So do with that what you will. Then next up, I read the final installment, When Villains Rise in the trilogy. It was so good. I binged this trilogy. Like if I could read every series this fast, I'd be reading so much more. It was so good. It was a really great start to my year. Honestly, this year's been so good reading wise. Next up, I read Colton Gentry's 3rd Act by Jeff Zentner. It was so good. It's his first adult novel, and I definitely recommend checking out that author. He's just great. Next up, I read To Kill a Kingdom. I thought I would enjoy this. It seemed like something I would absolutely love based off of the vibes. I love the ocean. I tell stories about the ocean, pirates, and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, this is the perfect book for me. It's going to be guaranteed 5 stars. It was not. It was still a good book, I guess. I just did not love it like I had hoped. Maybe I had too high of expectations, but maybe this book was just not as good as it really looks like it would be. Sorry. Please let me know if you have any thoughts on that, I guess. Next up, I had Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun. This is an audiobook. It's the 3rd book in the Finlay Donovan series. It starts out with Finlay Donovan is killing it. It is so good. It's about like an author that accidentally gets like overheard in a cafe and people think she's like an assassin. So she gets all these assignments and she keeps on getting more and more trouble, and it is just such a good series. I love it so much. Next up, we have Jade Fire Gold. This was a book that I had read because well, first off, I mean, look at it. I have the Owl Crate edition. It's signed. It's beautiful. I think under the dust jacket, special too, and there's a poster underneath. Like, oh my goodness. I also got this like box half off. So it was like $17 for this and a whole box of goodies. Like, isn't that great? I love Our Grades so much. I read it because I thought it'd be a great comp title for my book that I'm currently writing, and I believe it is a great comp title. It was not my absolute favorite. I think I rated it 4 stars, but it was still super good. Next up, we have another audiobook, and it is Veronica Ruiz Breaks the Bank. And this is a novella that goes along with the Finlay Donovan series. It was all right. I mean, it was short, so it helped me boost my goal, I guess. Next up, we have The Devil's Highway. I read this for class. It was my immigration class. I thought it was good. It was nonfiction, so it was a little bit slow at times, but it was definitely an important book. And it's about the travels from Mexico to the US while people are immigrating, and obviously those travels are very difficult. So next up, we have Cursed. I started this book at the beginning of the year, like when I read Better Than the Movies. It was the sequel to Gilded by Marissa Meyer, and safe to say I did not love this one. I found it very obnoxious. I had to start listening to it as an audiobook because I just couldn't handle reading it anymore. At least I finished the series. I will say that. Yeah, that definitely slowed me down this year though. I read the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Good Girl, Bad Blood. As per usual, super good. Great twist in the end. When I read mysteries, I always think that they start out so slow, then the end it's just like a banger. And this one was no different. It was a little bit slow for me at first. It was still good, but I hadn't read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder in a few months, so it wasn't really like, I need to read this right now, because The Good Girl's Guide to Murder felt like it wrapped up so much. So I was like, do I even want to read the other ones? Either way, I did. I enjoyed it. I think I gave this one 4 stars. So good. Next up, we have my final class book for my immigration class, The Beautiful Things That Heaven Bears. I think this novel is fantastic. Like, genuinely go read it. It's like literary fiction. It's just so heartbreaking, so sad. It's easy to get through. Short audiobook, short book. I mean, look at it. Next up, we have Soul Before Sunrise. This was another arc that I read. I requested it on impulse because it was a graphic novel, and I love reading graphic novels. I got it from NetGalley. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was like 100 or so pages, very quick to read, and I'm glad I picked it up. Definitely one of my top NetGalley reads. Not the top, but since turning 18, about a year ago now, I have had a NetGalley account, so I've gotten like 17 books from them, and I would say I only enjoyed like a 4th, so this made the 4th. So that's fantastic. Next up, we have My Lady Jane. This is one of my favorite books. I was home for spring break and I had access to all my bookshelves around me. As you can see, there are many. I have a lot of books. And I was thinking about this book like all week before coming home. So I was like, I'm gonna reread it. So I read this all in one night. It's like 500 pages. It's pretty big. Super funny. 5 stars yet again. Another spring break read of mine was the 5th volume of Heartstopper. I love Heartstopper, and I only had 1 volume left, so I was like, I need to read this just to finish another series. I know that there's one more coming out, but it's not out yet, so I'm gonna say I've completed the series for now. Another book I read during my spring break, it's the 3rd Upside Down Magic book. I know you're probably like looking at this like, what is this doing here? But this was a book that I read with my brother. I usually read with my brother. This was a book I super enjoyed as a kid. It's about like these kids who have magical abilities, but they're kind of put in the strange class because they don't really fit into the regular magical abilities, and it's just so sweet. I think these books really aged well. Next up, we have Finlay Donovan, Rolls the Dice. This 4th book. It had just come out when I got it, and there's 2 more, I think, but I am done with the series for now, so I finished another series. Let's go. And I really enjoyed it, as per usual. These books are just so fun. They're kind of like, I call them, with my friend who also reads them, we call them like mommy romances and like mommy mysteries, and they kind of are. Like, those are the types of books that you'd see in grocery stores. But you know what? Mommy mysteries slap. I'm saying this as someone who's in college and 19 years old. I even told this to one of my professors, and he was like kind of agreeing with us. He's like, this story reminds me of a mommy mystery, and I'm like, hand it over. Give me the mommy mystery. Next up, we have As Good as Dead, 3rd and final book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. So good. I really enjoyed this. I think I also gave it 4 stars. It's thicker than the other ones, also very floppy. Really do appreciate that. It was very good. I read this one over spring break as well, and I highly recommend this series. And then probably a lesser known book, but this is Killjoy. It's a novella that takes place before A Good Girl's Guide to Murder happens. I read it afterwards. I also, can you believe this is like 100-page book. It looks a little bit longer because they have like a 50-page intro. This is all a preview of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So this is the only story you get. It is $13. $13. I got it for $6 because I used Book Outlet, and I'm so thankful because I would not pay any more than that for this small of a book. This isn't even like book length. Anyways, I honestly say skip it. If you really want more Pip content, there's no Ravi in this one. I'm sorry, there isn't. And I find that depressing. And it was alright. I liked it, I guess. I don't know, very short read. I'm a big fan of short reads because they boost my Goodreads goal like there's no tomorrow. Next up, we have a book that I read for class. This one I read for a piano class because my professor, I guess this was his way of being like, you should practice more. And like, honestly, I enjoyed this. I'm glad I have a copy. I mean, I obviously tabbed it quite a bit, but to be honest, I feel like I already do most things in this book. Like, it all just seemed logical to me. Like, I did learn a little bit, but honestly, only read this if you don't know how to establish your habits. It's not going to be life-changing if you already have your life together. It's probably a little bit mean. Whatever. I read it for class. I thought it was all right. I think it's very accessible writing because it's very easy to read in general. And I'm a huge fan of that because nonfiction is rough. Just straight up, it is rough. Next up, we have another arc. This is 12th Night by Alexine Fullmouth. Either way, that's a pen name for Olive E. Blake. She wrote the Atlas 6. So this is one of her romances. It's coming out in mid-June, I think. And I love this. By far one of the best NetGalley books I've ever read. It is such a great combination of just nerds and like enemies to lovers, but it's not really enemies to lovers. If it's contemporary, it can't be. It's just like, I don't really like you too. Ooh, I'm kind of in love. So it was really good. Also, the sprayed edges. I am planning on buying a copy of this book. This is the only book I've read for NetGalley that I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy this. So take that what you will. Next up, I have this craft book. It's called Writing Fiction. It's by Burroway, I think Janet, I don't know, something like that. Read it for my fiction class. It's all right. Basically, in my opinion, this is a good book if you're not really experienced in fiction, but there are better writing books out there. I've read a lot of writing books on my own, and I think this one has some good content, but you'd be better off reading ones that are more like current and more marketed as like revolutionary takes, because this isn't going to speed up your process. It's going to give you a lot of vocab and a lot of really weird short stories. Next up, we have another audiobook. This is A Curse for True Love. This is by Stephanie Garber. It's the third book in Once Upon a Broken Heart, and it was an all right finale. The first book, great. Second book, phenomenal. This book, it was not like, I don't know. The first book, the way that the series was going was just like straight up, and then it just took a dip at the end. It was all right. I'm glad I completed the series, but to be honest, I kind of forgot that I read this. This book, next up, is See You Yesterday by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This book is so good. First off, it takes place in a university in Washington. University of Washington, actually. Sorry. I'm from Washington, so I thought that was great. I've been to that campus, so I really like knew what they were talking about. Super cool. I do have a physical copy of this book, but I loaned it to a friend because she wanted to read it. It was really good. It was a really fun read. The first time I picked this up, I read 200 pages, then I let it sit for a week. Then I read another 200 pages in one sitting, then I was done. So it was very enjoyable. I just got busy during the week. That's it. Then we have another book that I love. This one, when I was moving out, my books took a bit of a tumble. So as you can see, there's some scrapes on the page. Actually, I don't really know if you can see. Whatever. Either way, the Southern Book Club's Guide Slaying Vampires. I thought this was a great book. I think I rated it 5 stars. It was just so good. I loved it. I don't know. It's pretty self-explanatory just based off the title. It is a little bit darker than you'd expect, I think, because I thought it'd be more comedic. It is not. There's some funny parts, but the funny parts were not there the whole time. So it got unexpectedly dark halfway through, and I still enjoyed it. It is a very good intro to funny horror, which I think is a great genre that should be explored a lot more. Next up, we have one more book for school. No, 2 more. Never mind. I lied. I'm sorry. We have If I Survive You by Jonathan Scoffrey. It's a collection of short stories. It follows a family. I think I rated it 3 stars. A lot of these are just really, really weird. I think it's a good book. It's well written, but I don't know. A very interesting pick for a class, I guess. Then we have final book for school, The Subversive Copy Editor. It's about editing from an editor's perspective. I had to read it for my editing class. I read the whole thing, so it is going in here. I think I did calculations at some point. 20% of the books I read are usually for school, so I don't know if that's interesting info for you guys, but whatever. Then I have another audiobook. This is Darius the Great Deserves Better. I thought it was really good. It's a sequel to Darius the Great Is Not Okay, which I read first semester. Like, you know how some books that are contemporary, especially, they get sequels and you're like, why did that exist? I did not feel that way. I love this so much. Highly, highly recommend. Next up, I read Julie of the Wolves. You're probably looking at this thinking, why is a college-age student reading this? Simple answer. I have a Newbery box set, and this was the last one I needed to complete it. So I read it. It was very short, but boy, did it feel long. It was not good. Sorry. I don't really care. Next up, as an audiobook, I read Less is Lost. It's sequel to Less. I thought it was alright. I read Less, not because I enjoyed it, but because it had a lot of information and like knowledge in it, and I think this book kind of had that, but also not really. Sorry, that's my take. Then I read some more NetGalley books. The Breakup Pact by Emma Lord. Could go without it. This is Full Shift by Jennifer Dugan. I thought this was very good. This is kind of embarrassing. I'm a sucker for werewolf books. Not like the Wattpad werewolf, but like the technical side and like the silly side. Like, it's just so fun. Highly recommend. This one comes out in August, I think, so you should check that out when it comes out. Then my final book, and the most disappointing one of all, One of Our Kind by Nicola Yoon. If you know Nicola Yoon, she wrote Everything, The Sun Is Also a Star, Instructions for Dancing. All those books I read, I loved. I hated this. I have a review on it, and if you're really that interested, you should go read it, but I don't really want to talk anymore. 1 star. So, to conclude, those are all the books that I've read this semester, which it is a total of, I think, 36. And 36 in 1 semester is quite a bit. I usually read about 2 books a week. To put that in perspective, that's because I read audiobooks too. I read audiobooks while I do like dishes and other chores. To wrap up, thank you for watching. I'm so glad you watched this if you did. Let me know if you have any questions. I just thought it'd be fun, and I know this was the video I was looking for last year when I was like, how many books do I bring to college? I don't know. I will say you will probably buy more books than you read, so don't bring that many. Just trust me on that. My bookshelves, I had to, they're all 4 feet across, and I filled them up more times than I could count. I'd send a box home with my parents, and it was embarrassing. Just straight up, my bad. But if there's a good bookstore, you're going to buy books. I'm sorry, it's true. Only bring like 10, and then when you go home again, bring another 10. That's all. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I see you next time, and I hope you subscribe, and I hope you hit the like button, because that would be very cool. And I'm also just starting this channel, and I have a lot of big plans, so you should keep watching, right? Just saying, you should. Thank you, bye. Oh shit, ah!